Ladies and gentlemen, it's the podcast with a K. As you already know, because we've got a jaunty little jingle at the beginning there. I'm Christian Cawley, and with me this week is James Baldock. Hello, James.
Hello, Christian. How are you?
I'm grand. Thank you for asking, as if we've never already had this conversation in the past 10 minutes. Now then, we are here this week. We're going for kind of a short turn on this. So basically what we're talking about is stuff that's relevant to you still, hopefully, fingers crossed. We're here to talk about the plethora of Doctor Who spoilers that are doing the rounds. No, we're not. But there is a photo we can talk about.
There's a picture of Jodie Whittaker standing on a hill.
Yes, looking wistful. No, there's a bit more to it than that, though, isn't there? Because there's a logo, and there's an accompanying video, which we were kind of discussing before we hit record whether or not this was going to be, whether or not to describe as a trailer or not. It's not a trailer, is it? It's a visual, isn't it? It's a minor animation.
It's not even a title sequence. It's just like it's essentially a 16-second think piece which sort of shows the logo with a couple of weird sound effects by the chap. Oh, what's his name? We'll talk about it later. The chap who works for Radiophonic Workshop, and it's
Marquez?
just sorry,
Marquez.
No, the other guy. Anyway, it's all been sort of done to look sort of very swishy, and there's a lot of red and a lot of dark stuff going on, and then it's the logo, and then that's your lot. I mean, we assumed that the people at BBC Worldwide Showcase got to see rather more of it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that was an event. No, that was yesterday afternoon, or was it the afternoon before?
I think so. I think it was yesterday, but yes, it's by the time you hear this, it will have been.
It was on Tuesday, wasn't it? Monday or Tuesday this week? Probably Tuesday this week, yeah. So you will see the logo on the graphic for this week's podcast with a K, so you'll know what we're talking about. If you've somehow, and I say this as if it is in some way doubtful, but actually, as we know, people do miss things when it comes to Doctor Who, just because, it's not on air. There's very little news about it anyway, and it's possible to just be going about your daily business and not know that there's a new logo coming along. And, there's the other side of things. Most people don't actually care whether there's a new logo or not. But you do, dear listener. We know that. So it is, I think, the most, because we are talking about like a typeface, which I think is, someone said it's Century. I'm not entirely sure if that's right or not. Or based on Century with some amendments to customizations, but I think the most stunning part of it is the graphic that accompanies it.
Yes,
because there is the sound that you mentioned. There's the visuals of the TARDIS kind of bisecting some darkness and some light, and these shapes which appear to be spelling out Doctor Who. And it sits there, and it is nice. It is elegant, which I don't know if that is intentional. Because it is an elegant font and it is elegantly presented. There is also the Greek symbol for female fertility in there as well, where the H and the O meet at the end of Who. Now, all of these things are probably intentional. Whether or not they're wise or not is another matter. I don't think they're a massively unwise decision, but it does sort of lead one into wondering whether or not this is, a female Doctor Who, fine, but is she girly Doctor Who? Are we making a big thing of her being a woman, or are we just having adventures with the Doctor?
I think it's inevitable they're going to make a big thing out of it.
Yeah.
Being a woman. It's not to be avoided. I mean, they made a big thing out of Bill's sexuality last series. Mm-hmm. It was ironic that, at the press screening we had Stephen Moffat essentially telling us off, saying, don't scare the kids. It's not your job to scare the kids, it's my job, which was quite funny. But there was this whole thing about, Bill's gay and it's not a big deal. okay, that's fine. But it was kind of mentioned quite a lot.
It was a big deal that it wasn't a big deal.
It was a major plot point in the first and last episode. You know, or at least the love story was. And the fact that it was another woman, that wasn't a problem. But they kind of paraded it a bit. And yeah, I mean, I find it difficult to believe that they wouldn't be doing the same thing with Whittaker. There'll be all sorts of jokes about, oh, it's so much easier to drive the TARDIS now I am a woman. Or maybe there won't be. I don't know. But I sense that this is the way that Doctor Who is destined to be written, simply because it ticks certain boxes. And actually, I'm not going to judge it for that, because if it turns out to be funny and clever and amusing, I can kind of live with a little bit of box ticking. But I think it's very likely that they're going to go down that road next series. But who's to say? We haven't seen anything of it yet, and it's going to be some time before we do. So at the moment, it's a bit of a Schrodinger's TARDIS.
Schrodinger's TARDIS, indeed. So how are you feeling about the?
Doesn't work at all, though. But yeah.
How are you feeling about the actual graphic, the logo, specifically the logo?
Okay, first of all, let's look at the background. Okay, it is clearly Omega's helmet. Breaking apart. I looked at this logo, I thought, meh, that's fine, okay. Within an hour, Radio Times had produced another article to say, is there a secret hidden message? So the slanted, reorientated end of H and O to show what may or may not be, but is probably the Venus symbol. The symbol for female, and therefore, yes, big deal. I mean, I just keep thinking about Prince when he changed his name to the artist formerly known. And they had that whole symbol thing going on there, so I don't know. But I just think, well, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that we'd done that, because I don't know if we can get this, actually. If you look up Theta Sigma, which of course was the Doctor's college nickname, although the number of people I see in fan groups who are still convinced it's his real name, I mean, God knows. But if you turn that on its side, of course, it reads Who a little bit. If you sort of re-invite it, perhaps we can put that in the show notes, and I can put the image afterwards, just so people can see. So it wouldn't be the first time they've done that. But as for conspiracy theories go and sort of hidden meanings go, Radio Times, it's pitiful. Okay? You can do better than that, alright? I throw my glove down in challenge to you, and I fart in your general direction, alright? Because, really, if you want to tear this logo apart, we can do that, and I have done it, okay? And if you like, Christine, if you will indulge me, I've got a list of things here which I'd like to talk about, which I found in the logo this morning. This
is like Ian Duncan Smith on yesterday's Daily Politics, whipping a list out. Alright, go for it.
We are tearing up the rulebook here. Right, first of all, for listeners, if you would be so kind, please, as to scroll back up to the top, so actually have a look at the logo, because you're going to need to have this on your screen as we're doing this. Okay, first of all, let's look at the D. Okay, the D has got that little line coming through it. Now, the line we're going to come back to later on, but as it stands, the D looks like a sideways pointing ice lolly. Yeah? Okay. Which suggests to me that there will be a series arc this year, which will involve Martians from a parallel universe, sideways. Okay, right? That's the first thing. Okay. Now let's look at the placement of the BBC logo. You'll see that it actually comes directly over O and R. Okay. So you have the letters B, B, C, O, R, or if you reorientate them and move them around a bit, C, O, R, B, B. Okay, which I looked up this morning and discovered that it was actually a craft beer called Coffee Oatmeal Rum Barrel Brown, and it suggests to me that this will be the Doctor's new favourite tipple of choice next year. Okay, there's more. Look at the line going through it now, okay? It intersects the entire logo. Now, it's supposed to be the TARDIS going through the time stream. I suggest that it is, in fact, an acknowledgement, subtle but there, of the rumoured split that has come to the fandom, and this is all building up to Doctor Who Series 12, which will be subtitled Civil War. Okay? All right. Now, moving on from there, we've also got the uneven bars in the H. Have a look at the H. Can you see how, the one half of it is sort of down and the other half has been slanted right up? Yeah?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Suggest a hill. H for hill. Okay? Climbing. The Doctor will find her TARDIS on a hill somewhere. That fits with all the publicity images we've seen. Yeah?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Yellow and gold lettering. All right? The lettering is predominantly yellow with hints of gold in it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yellow, associated with cowardice. Gold, associated with 1980 Cybermen. The Cybermen are going to invade Tivoli, the cowardly planet. Will this mean we'll see another appearance by David Walliams playing Gibbis? I doubt it. He's probably working on a book, but there will be something. There will be a cowardly planet and the Doctor will go and save them again, or maybe discover they don't want to be saved. Moving on towards the very end of it, notice that the H and the O, the H is very close to the O, but if you actually look at the right-hand side of the H and the O next to it, it looks rather like a 10, which alludes to the clear and present return of the 10th Doctor. David Tennant is signed up for a cameo in this series, and it's so secret that we're not allowed to know about it, okay? The only thing I can't figure out is if you look at the letter, 3 of the letters, the D at the beginning, and the T and the R, you'll notice that there's a little slanting going on. Can you see what I mean, looking at it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So those 3 letters are clearly meant to stand out. We've got R, T, and D, okay? And I can't figure out what they stand for. So, any suggestions on that front, then please do let me know. But I'd say that there is far more in this logo than we've been led to believe, and that took me 10 minutes to come up with this morning, so stick that in your pipe and smoke it, Radio Times.
Round of applause. There's, I mean, I think, obviously you're being a little bit flippant there, but I think there is a lot of, there is plenty that's to be read into it, and some of what you say might be accurate, probably isn't. I did wonder if it was a skyrocket lollipop.
Actually, it could be, couldn't it? Yeah. It could be a Skyray. Didn't they do?
Sky Radar, yeah.
I'm sure they did Doctor Who Skyrays in the 70s.
Yeah, there was an advert for it, wasn't there? There was, so they had it on the 30 Years in the TARDIS, I seem to recall.
Did you ever have the K9 Ice lolly?
No.
It was great. It was orange, very, very orange. Very good, sickly sweet, that sort of thing. But
I say no. I've no recollection of it. My gran had a sweet shop, so I might have done.
Your gran had a sweet shop?
Yeah, my gran had a sweet shop.
You were popular at school.
Well, she sold it around in the mid '80s. So, and to be honest with you, I didn't really make a big thing about it. Because it was over the other side of town to where we lived, and there was kind of 2 sweet shops on the way to school anyway, so it wasn't a major thing, I don't think. No, I don't recall anyone asking if we could go to my grand's sweet shop or anything like that, so. Yes. I got plenty of sweets. Not complaining. I was she used to have those, which you don't get so often, ice creams, like choc ice size ice creams without the chocolate on, that you would then stick between 2 wafers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, yes.
I think you can get them kind of pre-packaged like that now, but in those days you couldn't, so you had to sort of mess around with it and do it yourself.
Yeah. Getting back to
yes.
I'd love to talk about sweets all day. I don't know. The whole thing with fandom is that, you all want to dissect everything and take apart everything. And some while ago, I got a bit tired of it. So now every episode that comes out, I make a point of producing long fan conspiracy rants that satirise, I hope, the tendencies. Unfortunately, Poes Law applies in abundance. And I'm always getting told I have way too much free time, which may be true in any case. But it is noticeable that people don't realise when they're being rigged. But that's fine. I mean, the number of people this morning, I posted this image on social media this morning, a number of people have come back to me and said, I think the RTD might be Russell T Davies. Which...
Well, you should be grateful for their assistance, quite frankly.
I suppose so. It just has back my head against the wall,
Have you seen the black and white version of the logo?
Of the logo? No, I haven't. Is that on Google? Can we look that up now?
Yes. There's a monochrome version.
It is there.
And I don't know if it's official or whether someone's made it, but I've adapted it slightly, and because it is that linear form, I've adapted it slightly to make it stacked.
Yep.
And I personally think it looks a lot better that way. And it looks somewhat sinister as well. Yes, no, fair enough. Well, I suppose I could always sort of drop the
colour settings on my laptop to see it properly. I can't find that on the internet right now, but I suspect it's there. And I think there is a market for a whole black and white episode of Doctor Who, isn't there? There must be. You know, you could do one simply in monochrome. I mean, they did it in the X-Files, and it's an absolute masterpiece.
Well, they did it often in the 60s as well.
Do you know what? Okay, fine. But you know what I mean. There's a lot of talk about Happiness Patrol, yeah. And in every documentary you see about the Happiness Patrol, they talk about the fact that it's supposed to be film noir, but it looked a bit rubbish. And to be fair, they did a very good job with the set they had and the budget.
Yeah.
But of course, the lighting in it is very flat, and necessarily so. But they've always wanted to do a slightly more filming version, and I think there is a lot of market for having an episode where the TARDIS lands in a black and white film noir set that's all fog and shadows, and Jodie Whittaker walks out into the fog and walks through a very foggy set where everything's sort of a bit hard to see and a bit sort of muted. And if anybody at the BBC is listening, perhaps that's something you could consider for 2019, because it'll probably win you a BAFTA if you did.
Does sound like the opening of Web of Fear at the moment, but...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. When Doctor Who switched to colour, it was like, wow, Doctor Who's in colour is great, but there is a certain...
Yeah.
There is a certain...
Well, going back to my gran, she had a black and white telly until about 1990.
Yeah.
So... if I was ever at my grand's house and Doctor Who was on, there's no glorious colour at Grandma's house. It was sinister black and white.
Absolutely.
Gripping the cushion.
But it might have improved the Happiness Patrol.
It might possibly. With regards to this new logo, there's obviously, we do this silly little dance every few years of, there's a new logo coming. It's going to be crap, or it's going to be awesome, and there ends up being a logo you like, a logo that you like better than the last one. Possibly it's your favourite, possibly it's the one that you hate more than any logos. Where do you place the new Jodie Whittaker era Doctor Who logo in the pantheon of Doctor Who logos?
Oh, do you know, I don't actually have a pantheon myself. There is a general pantheon, but there's an article in that, isn't there? Every Doctor Who logo ranked from worst to best. The problem is it's such a subjective choice. It's just like, surely it's the one you like the look of. With regards to the new Who stuff, I liked the last one, the one they used sort of most recently with Capaldi's era, quite a lot, because it is sort of quite stark and minimalist. As for the older stuff, I don't know. I never really look at it. It always seems a bit, it's like it's a font. I don't get too excited about fonts.
Yeah, I think for me,
I get excited when they don't work.
If I was to put one at the bottom, it would be a toss-up between the Neon and the McCoy.
Yeah, okay. Well, the McCoy's a disaster, but the whole McCoy title sequence is a disaster anyway. So
I think it's brave.
Yeah. But by Neon, can I assume you mean the Davison and Baker?
Davison Baker one? Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, what we're saying is that the titles went downhill in the 80s, aren't we? Yeah.
I suppose in a way we are saying that. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like the Troughton, actually.
Yeah.
I think Troughton is quite sort of. I'm looking at a collection of logos here to the extent that the word Doctor no longer has any meaning for it. Because it's just on the screen so much. I think the Troughton one is a good one.
I think I've always been a fan, probably, of my preference has either been the Pertwee / McGann or the Tom Baker logo. And really, the Tom Baker logo is an awful piece of logoage. If logoage isn't a word, it isn't. It is now. Because of the diamond shape, it's quite difficult to do anything with, and you've got that silly arc over the top and the Who bit in the middle, and you put the wrong colours on it, and it looks kind of completely comical and not serious at all. But it fits the show so perfectly and that title sequence so perfectly that you can't really go without it.
God, I never noticed until now how similar the Pertwee and McGann ones were. I'd never spotted it, but it's to all intents and purposes the same logo, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just with obvious sort of gradient fills, which work very well for McGann. But
Yeah.
it's not the only thing about the McGann film that does work, arguably, apart from McGann himself. But let's not go there.
Not today.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, I like it. I just, as I say, I don't get too excited about logos and typefaces. Really, I don't. I'm more interested as to what they're going to do with the theme this year.
The thing?
Yeah, the theme.
Oh, the theme. Beg your pardon. I thought we were talking.
Yeah, well, you could, I mean, I suppose we can also talk now about the fact that Murray. I mean, have you discussed Murray Gold yet? Because I think it is now more or less official that Murray Gold is no longer going to be a part of Doctor Who.
Well, yeah, let's talk about Murray Gold.
Yeah.
Because he has been associated with Doctor Who for... What year is it? Christ almighty. 13 years!
Yes.
13 years, yes. It's 2018 now, isn't it? Yeah.
He's the only composer they have used in the show's new incarnation.
Which is quite odd. I can't think of another TV show that's used the same composer for that long. Doctor Who used composers repeatedly over its original run, but I don't believe any of them were doing every single episode of Doctor Who for 13 years.
No, well, the only thing I can think of is the X-Files.
Right.
Where Mark Snow, to the best of my knowledge, has scored just about everything. I don't know what involvement he had in the films, but I know he's around for the new series as well, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I can't imagine the X-Files without Mark Snow. That's the thing.
Well, the thing with Doctor Who and Murray Gold, I think, is he quite rightly is lauded for creating some iconic themes for the Doctor over sort of his first 8 years. I can't help but feel over the past 5 years there has been less of that, and whether that was a decision mandated by the producers or whether he just, you know, 'cause like any creative, you have to be inspired by what you're working on, and perhaps he just wasn't jiving with the Capaldi era. I don't know, but I can't remember many. There's certainly no memorable I Am the Doctor type chime in the one for a far better word in the Capaldi era. I don't feel there's some good soundtracks for individual episodes.
Well, I mean, there is the 12 Doctors theme, isn't there?
Yeah,
which I like a lot. It's sort of quite. I remember when we saw the pilot for you didn't hear that until about 15 minutes in. I think it was possibly at a moment when Capaldi strides out of the study and is walking across the lawn of outside the university. Mm-hmm. I think that was the scene, but it was I got goosebumps hearing it again. So yeah, I know it's not sort of as big as some of the other themes. It's not as big as Matt Smith's theme.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. There has been a sort of a subdued tone to his work over the past 2 years or so. And yes, you say that might be lack of communication with the material. I think most people like Clara's theme, don't they?
Yeah, I should think so, yeah.
But yeah, I know I've read a lot of threads this week with people saying that they're very sad that Murray Gold has left. I personally think it maybe it's time for a change. I don't know.
Oh, definitely. I think they should probably. And looking back, you can say, oh, well, you know, it's easy to say in hindsight. But I think if you're changing things around, you've got to make the change. You've got to make, you know, changes to your show. Otherwise, you're going to be linked inextricably with what came before in the case of Doctor Who. Not so much, you know. Well, I mean, yeah, actually, you can look at Coronation Street, and every time there's a new producer, there's a new arrangement of the theme tune. They get someone new in to do the theme tune.
Are you serious? Yeah, do they really change Coronation? Because
they've changed it quite regularly, yeah.
My mum watched it for years, and I don't remember them ever changing the theme music.
Yeah, over the past, you know, in the modern era, they've refreshed it several times, and the current version is kind of the current version is harks back to sort of the 70s era version with extra sort of tuba, I think. Yeah. Whereas in the 90s, it didn't have so much tuba.
Yes.
But back to Doctor Who, I was always surprised that they didn't bring Ben Foster in to replace Murray Gold.
Yeah, I don't know. Is he much of a composer? I mean, I know he conducts them very well. But,
he has. Yes, he's done plenty of composing. He did Torchwood.
Did he?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, yeah, Torture's music, I remember sort of, well, not hating, which I'd suggest to me that it's okay, you know. Yeah. A lot of the time, I think if you don't notice it, it must be all right. So, yeah, no, I don't know. I'm sure Chibnall's got his own ideas. I mean, maybe we could do with not having a composer this year and just sort of having ambience. Is that too bold a step? I don't know.
It might be quite a bold step. I'm not saying it's wrong.
No. Well, did you watch Twin Peaks last year?
No, I didn't.
No, because what struck me about that was how silent it was. There's an awful lot of silence in Twin Peaks. I mean, I don't just mean scenes where there is just dialogue, but scenes in which there is nothing. There's just a bit of birdsong in the background. And it was liberating after years of tedious Murray Gold cues layered on top of moments where you are clearly supposed to be sad. And that's not all the composer's fault. They obviously said, well, look, could you just write something heart-wrenching because we haven't really got the pathos for this scene yet, so you have to make it sadder than it actually is. But there is that sense of, oh, God, just turn it down a bit, please. And so when you get a show like Twin Peaks, or Wolf Hall, which depended exclusively on lutes and a bit of violin here and there, you think, gosh, this is actually quite... It lets the actors breathe a bit. And I've always felt that Gold's music, as well written as it is, it never did that for me. And I know I'm in a minority because a lot of people who sort of love Murray Gold's work, and I've always sort of wished that he'd just turn it down a bit. You know, I mean, Series 9 actually, 2 of the episodes in that, Heaven Sent and Sleep No More, which is often critically lambasted. But they do feature almost in a sort of an ambient experimental soundtrack in places. And they're worth checking out, especially now that we know Series 9 is coming out for a CD release, I think, later this year. So I think I'd like to hear those cues again, because that was a point at which I felt actually Doctor Who was being interesting again and experimental in a way that it was in the sort of early 80s when they sort of changed, they got rid of Dudley Simpson and brought in Dick Mills.
I think there's a case to be had that we should have a podcast at some point on Sleep No More, because I can't help but feel it was unfairly maligned at the time, to be honest with you. But getting back to what you were saying earlier about different approaches, would a sort of Kerry Blyton approach, would that maybe work these days? I'm not.
I don't. You'll have to give me a frame of reference for that. I'm not
so we're talking. Well, Blyton wrote incidental music for 3 classic Doctor Who's: Silurians, Death to the Daleks, and Revenge of the Cybermen.
Ah, okay.
So you got those. There's sort of like primitive musical instruments and very, very short, sort of jaunty scores in places.
Yeah, maybe. I just think they need to think outside the blue box a bit. To use the awful pun there. I think there is room for them to do something differently, and I can't help thinking that maybe something that's less obviously themey and more minimalist, maybe.
Well, minimalist is a word that I would use to describe the soundtrack on the thing that we were talking about earlier. Is description I've forgotten, the short teaser thing.
Yeah.
The sound on that is, if you ramp up the volume on that, the sound on that is very interesting. It's very short. It's obviously only like 15 seconds long, but it's different to anything we've heard on Doctor Who before.
Absolutely. I don't know what involvement, if any, the Radiophonic Workshop have had in the new version of Doctor Who. I mean, I think they were brought back to life in 2012. But I don't know if they did anything for the show. Do you know that offhand?
I don't believe they have. I'm not. I think they have been involved in like DVD releases, haven't they? I don't think there's any TV show stuff.
Well, maybe it's time. I mean, really, maybe we need to get back to that, just to have this sort of sense of. Because if Chibnall is going to change it, I mean, there is a risk that in completely rebranding, he's going to alienate people, but I think that's a given anyway, given his casting choices. Which for the record, I'm not opposed to, but I do think it's clear that there are going to be a number of people who don't want to watch the show now. So if you're changing a lot anyway, go the whole hog with it. Do something that is completely different, rather than something that's sort of a bit like the Doctor Who we remember, but perhaps not quite as good because of this, and this.
Which is kind of what's happened for the past 13 years.
Well, exactly. I think if you're going to if you be brave with it, and perhaps changing musical direction is one of a number of things they could do. But it's sad for Murray Gold, although I don't think he's going to be short of work. But I think it is time they got something that's different. But it is weird for these people who sort of grew up with New Who, having never watched it, and maybe have dabbled in the classic series, but they're watching the new series and they'll know nothing else but Murray Gold and his music. So that's kind of, it's going to be a shock to the system, to whoever they get now and whatever approach they get. But I think if you're in for a penny, in for a pound, right?
I think so, yeah.
Absolutely.
I think so. I think what you said before about, I'd largely agree with what you said, because I made an observation on Twitter the other day, which basically said that, if it's not a big change, then there's no point in having done any of it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the summary of it. So, yeah, I would largely agree with what you just said, yeah. Here we go. If Chibnall's Doctor Who simply falls into a traditional formula, there's really no point to him or Jodie. It has to be fresh and fight to remain so, because there's been plenty of times when Doctor Who has come along with a new change and then quickly fallen back into the old formula. Fight to remain so week in, week out. Anything else will not be remembered favourably.
I mean, in a way, I suppose the biggest change it's had was 2005. A lot of people say, oh, well, it's still the same programme, but I mean, it really wasn't. In very many ways, it wasn't. And what's been interesting over the past decade or so has been watch it gradually lapse back into something that was clearly crowd-pleasing for the older fans.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's a bad thing completely, but I do think that when you do that, you run the risk of making something which is like classic Doctor Who light, rather than, of which I think Twice Upon a Time was a prominent example. The idea of, let's get the first Doctor in, but with a 21st century perspective. No, let's not do that. Let's just have a new Doctor.
Yeah.
Or let's have the current Doctor doing something fun, rather than having all this ironic look back. I mean, it was lovely to see the Mondasian Cybermen again, or the original Cybermen.
Can we stop calling them Mondasian Cybermen? Because, we didn't call them that before.
We did it out of respect to Mr. Capaldi, who wanted to call them that. So I think, that's largely why I indulged him these past few months. But now he's gone, I reckon we can probably just go back to the originals. And Mr. Capaldi, if you're listening, I'm very sorry. But yeah, no, I think we ought to just say, the Fabric Cyberman. The Fabric Cyberman, is that a better one?
Fabric. The Fabricman.
The Fabricman, yes. Yeah. I think there was and again, we don't want to go down that road, but I suppose there is a possibility that that's one reason ratings may have slipped. The fact that, you're sort of you're catering to what has gone before more than what is current. But the people who were there before don't necessarily like.
It must be difficult for writers to do this, not just because it's a long-running show, but because, everything's available on DVD, you can watch it on the internet, you can pull up photos easily, it just falls back into your head straight away. So it must be very difficult for writers to detach themselves from what went before, whether I'm talking about an episode writer or the showrunner.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that job. I wouldn't, because you would be torn. I think, particularly as a fan as well, you'd be torn between sort of doing what was, what you liked and what worked. I know I'd have that. I'm sure I'd have that issue.
If you were the showrunner, what approach would you take?
I'd bring back Frobisher.
Okay.
Because Frobisher is due for arrival, and we have the technology now.
We do, yes.
And I love the idea of a penguin coming around the TARDIS, you know. And also you could warp him into anyone you want. So you could have guest companions.
Yeah.
But it would still be Frobisher. So it would almost be like a mini Doctor in the sense that you have a bunch of different guest actors playing over the course of a single series or two series of the same companion. And it would be interesting to sort of compare that to the Doctor. I think you could do that, and you could make it fresh and current, but also sort of please the people who liked the 1980s comic book series with Colin Baker. Both of them. You know.
Interesting approach.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just me thinking off the top of my head, but that's probably what I do. What would you do?
I would take a kind of a Pertwee-esque era caught on Urk, sort of stuck on Urk situation.
So you'd do that?
I would do that, yes I would, and I would combine it with pretty much ripping off Primeval.
Okay.
And I would make the TARDIS the cause of the anomalies letting stuff through.
Oh, so just for the benefit of the people at home who don't know Primeval, and also me, who doesn't know Primeval, could you give us a gist?
So Primeval was an ITV show that started in 2007, 2008, maybe 2006. It certainly ran till about 2011. Initially starred Douglas Henshaw with Ben Miller and Andrew Lee Potts and other people that have been in it include Kieran McMenamin and the other guy whose name escapes me at the moment. And it's basically a team of people investigate rips in the space-time continuum that they call anomalies, and through these anomalies come monsters from the past and also from the future. And they deal with them usually by sending them back. But in pretty much every series, there's a hidden plan going on in the background that they're unaware of, even though they're supposed to be the official team who deal with the anomalies. It wasn't a bad show in terms of ITV's cult TV successes over the past, since Doctor Who came back. I think pretty much the only thing that really goes ahead, has surpassed it are the Thunderbirds, our Go series, and the thing with Phil Davis and what was it called? The thing set in London, the detective thing with the Jack the Ripper elements to it.
Oh yes, no, I know what you mean. Yes, I haven't seen it. But
yeah, they're the only things that I feel have done better than Primeval. I mean, Primeval ran for 5 series, so it didn't do badly. It was not considered to be as good as Doctor Who. I think unfairly, having rewatched it recently with the children, there's a lot to recommend in Primeval. Certainly, with the last sort of 4 years of Doctor Who, I think if Primeval had come along a bit later, it might have caused a few problems for the BBC with Doctor Who.
I suppose it could have done. Yes. Yeah. I was on holiday last week, in your neck of the woods, actually, or in Haworth, which is not too far from where you are, I gather. And we got back, and Emily had ordered a DVD, and it was a Crime Traveller.
All right.
Which I've never seen.
I watched the first episodes, and
that indicates to me you didn't like it very much.
I just thought, why did you not make Doctor Who?
Well, yeah, there was that. It was 97. It was Chloe Annette riding high on her modest success in Red Dwarf. Yeah. And of course, time traveling stories. Haven't watched it yet. We just finished watching The Bridge, so it'll be the next thing we watch. But so you're saying that you'd have this Rift and Earthbound Adventures? Yeah. So basically, there's something up with the TARDIS. TARDIS is crashed or whatever, which is nicely because that's just kind of what's happening in Doctor Who now. And then Splinters. So you've got this art that the Doctor has to do something about repairing the TARDIS. But also the Splinters cause the anomalies, which we'll borrow the term from Primeval. There's creatures coming through from other dimensions or from the past or from the future. And week in, week out, the Doctor and his crack band of people that deal with monsters, and I'm not calling them unit because just move on. Come on. Deal with them.
whilst, and that way you have the opportunity of bringing in all sorts of different creatures from different places. There might be dinosaurs, there might be aliens that have conquered an alternate universe Earth, something like that. So yeah, and do that, and just run it for a year or two, and at the end of it, get the TARDIS back. It just changes the dynamic of the show, and puts the Doctor in a completely new way, and gives you the monsters in a different way as well.
And you could have an sort of an organisation almost like Men in Black, where they give the benevolent invaders, because you could have some good and some evil. So you could have the benevolent invaders, and you could have a Men in Black organisation that's in charge of giving them green cards or things like that, and sort of helping them integrate.
Sure, yeah, perhaps, yeah, if they're the nice guys, yeah.
The task force for understanding and nationalising aliens, or tuna. So I just made that up while you were monologuing. I have no on file or anything, but yeah, no, I'm with that, and I think it's a good take on it. I'd like to see how that would develop. And I think the issue I've had with Doctor Who for years is that the TARDIS has become a show about the TARDIS.
Yeah.
And it never used to be. The TARDIS was a tool to get them where they needed to go, or frankly, where no one on God's earth would ever venture, but they're there because the TARDIS is global. And that's always the way it was. And I'm not saying that you can't change this. It's just that I think we've suffered a little bit by having a programme that is actively about time travel, rather than a show in which time travel featured as sort of a way to get the plot moving.
Yeah.
That's been Moffat, for better or worse. So it will be interesting to see if Chibnall continues in that vein or completely revamps it and makes the TARDIS once more incidental. I hope so, but it remains to be seen.
Yes, it does. I think it's probably worth talking about there is a kind of other piece of significant news about Doctor Who that which we haven't mentioned.
Is that?
Which came from last week when it was revealed that Milk VFX, who were formed from the remnants of the Mill, so they've kind of been with Doctor Who, like Murray Gold, for 13 years. Yeah. They're not doing visual effects in the next years.
Oh, I did remember reading something about that. So who have we got to replace them? Do you know?
It is... now, they do have a proper name, and I can't find it, but they're known as DNEG. Double negative, yeah. They're known as DNEG, and they worked on Blade Runner 2049.
Which I've got sitting in my collection as yet unwatched. Have you seen it?
I haven't watched it yet. I too have it sitting in my collection, waiting to watch it.
It's 2.5 hours, so I'm sort of sitting on it, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, fine.
But, you only have to pull up a trailer of that to see what a stunning movie that is. Now, I don't think anyone is suggesting that Doctor Who in 2018 is going to look like Blade Runner 2049.
No.
However, they're clearly a competent team, so we look forward with interest to see how they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
What they bring to the show.
One thing I'll say for New Who is that what it has done is it's made it possible for us to go to places which in the 60s, 70s and 80s were basically wobbly sets.
Yeah.
I think the first time I remember really being impressed with Classic Who's effects was probably Mind Warp, actually. That beautiful...
The opening sky.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that was very, very nice. And it really felt like an alien world. To the extent that most of them, with the best will in the world, didn't. They always felt like quarries, because that's where they were. But this really felt like, oh gosh, it looks alien. But of course, by the time 2005 comes along, almost 2 decades have elapsed, and you're able to do all these wonderful things. And when I watch it now, I think, I can believe that I'm there, rather than, in a quarry.
Yeah.
Doctor Who, in its current form, may do a lot of things I'm not always sure about, but one thing I think it always does well is produce lovely landscapes and great effects. And the Mill are a tough act to follow. So it'll be
certainly, yeah. Well, another thing Doctor Who's done, certainly in the last 13 years, is be a kind of beacon for British creative talent as well. And
see, you can't say that without sounding like Hugh Edwards, though, can you? You have to do that.
Do I?
Yeah. Yes, you do. It's not a torch now; it's a beacon. Beacon of hope. It's a beacon of love.
I'm going to avoid trying to sound like you, Edwards, because I can't.
That was me, for the benefit of our dear listeners, that was me doing Welsh. I know it didn't sound like it, but it was supposed to be. So,
yeah.
So it's a beacon for, go on, what are you saying?
For British creative talent, behind the scenes, like the mill, like the creatures of Neil Gordon's team. Yeah. And various other people that have been involved with Doctor Who over the years. Do you know what? There is one last thing we should talk about, okay?
Yep.
Sheffield.
Yes.
It's where they've been shooting Doctor Who.
Oh, of course, yes, I have.
Sheffield, or as we call it, Sheffield.
I don't think I've ever been there.
You've never been to Sheffield? Well, do you know, it's not the first time Doctor Who's been to Sheffield.
Go on.
In 2010...
Yep.
Yes. Or was it 9? No, 2010, early 2010, I went to Sheffield at the invite of BBC Worldwide to see to play the Doctor Who The Adventure Games, the first instalment.
The ones on the BBC website.
That's right, with the voice...
Those. I like them. They were very good.
They were good. They weren't Half-Life 2 or, BioShock, but they were good for what they were. They were they were well produced, well designed. They had Matt Smith and Karen Gillan's voices, among many others, including Mr. Nick Briggs, who was at this event. Basically, you got off the train at Sheffield. Actually, I'll tell the full story. At this point, I was gainfully employed by, quote, the man, unquote. So unable to get a day off work, I did that very naughty thing that you do when you can't get a day off work.
You didn't call in sick.
I called in sick.
Hang your head in shame.
From a railway station as I was about to board the train. And so I had to change at York, and then I made my way to Sheffield. Now, I'd been to Sheffield before, so I've had a vague idea of my way around. Yeah. The area where I was basically the railway station. You came off the train, and there were Daleks everywhere, and there were new series Daleks as well.
Yeah.
And there was BBC Radio York. There was Nick Briggs doing Dalek voices in a tent. There was someone who produced a Dalek a few years ago, hadn't they? That had like 2 guns. Dalek Storm or something like that. Storm's either Dalek, I don't know. That was there, although it wasn't invited. The Paradigm Daleks.
I've now got a vision of Banksy the Dalek, which has got 2 spray cans. Go on.
Excellent. Yeah. Picture of Davros and the Doctor snogging. So you've got the Paradigm Daleks, you've got Nick Briggs, you've got a radio live OB going on, and then I was there as part of the party, so I got my name badge, got bundled onto a coach and taken out to where the steelworks and those places used to be in Sheffield, where the team whose name escapes me right now, who published the game, where they were based, in quite a modest brick 2 or 3 story office, and they took us inside, and in there was the opportunity to basically look around this video game development studio, which was really interesting for me personally.
Yeah.
And there was a few talks. We got to see some designs that they hadn't used. So at the time, the first game was about to come out. Now, the second game was still in development. That was one with the Cybermen in it. So they let us have a look, although they wouldn't let us photograph some of the designs that they hadn't used. So the Cybermen in the second game, and they're pretty much standard Cybermen, excuse me, although some of the Cybermen are basically boiler-suited. Yeah. Now, what they showed us was Cybermen that looked more like the Mondasian Cybermen, maybe, or horror movie Cybermen, or the Cybermen that weren't used, in the 90s when there was talk of Doctor Who coming back in the late 90s. Very, very scary-looking Cybermen. There's also Sumo Digital, the company. There's also a talk by Charles Cecil, who's a kind of big name in video game production over the years. And also Phil Ford was there, I've just remembered as well, and he gave a talk as well to the assembled throng of bloggers. So it was probably one of the best Doctor-related days I'd ever had.
I bet it was. I'm just trying to remember. We had one game with Daleks, one with Cybermen, one with Sontarans, and I think the Rutans were either in it or mentioned. I can't remember which. It was about Rutans, which was quite exciting, because, of course, it was the first time we'd seen them since Fang Rock. But I cannot remember for the life of me what happened in the other game.
Well, that was a gunpowder plot, which was the final one. There's Shadows of the Vashta Narada as well.
Ah, that's the one.
Which is the undersea one. And then there's TARDIS, which frankly was a waste of time, I think.
Yes, I barely remember TARDIS, although I do remember. Yes, I mean it was more of a filler, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a bit of filler. Yeah.
It was. I think it was basically, can we do Edge of Destruction in the video game? No, really. Well, we'll put it out anyway. But,
I wouldn't argue with that.
Yeah. No, I remember those very well, and they were great. So that was Sheffield then.
That was that event took place in Sheffield, and the studio Sumo Digital, they were based in Sheffield. Yeah.
Excellent. So I don't know. Do you know if they're still there, or are they?
I believe they are, because a friend of mine, Dean Wilkinson, who's a video game writer largely, is also an animation writer, and he's you will know his work because he scripted a lot of SMTV Live as well.
Right.
Back in the day. He lives not far from me, and he's been down there in the past couple of years to work on a game with those guys. So as far as I know, they're still there. Yeah.
Excellent.
So hello, Sumo Digital.
Absolutely. Yes. I know. Of course, the team have been in Sheffield recently shooting, and it is interesting that we are still getting the odd location photos popping up on Twitter, even though they probably disappear quite quickly if they're not official. But it was lovely to see. I mean, presumably you've seen the shots of Ms. Whittaker out and about meeting and greeting the fans, and clearly loving what she's doing.
Yes.
And thrilling in the role of being the Doctor, and having every kid say, "Wow, you're the Doctor," which I think is a nice way of looking at it. So, yeah.
Yeah, can't argue with that. I think anyone who isn't enjoying being the Doctor is probably in the wrong job.
Yeah, well, I can think of one person who probably didn't enjoy it very much, but let's not talk about that right now.
Yes, we'll perhaps leave it there. Okay, so... yeah, well, look, if you've got anything to add, dear listener, by all means do so, whether you enjoy the new logo or not, what you think about Murray Gold, moving on, who should replace him, who you'd like to see replace him, what do you think of the video teaser logo reveal thing, and if you've got any favourable memories of Doctor Who The Adventures game, just bang them all in a comment on the website, on Audio Boom, or on Facebook. So hope you've enjoyed it, and from Mr. James Baldock and myself, it's goodbye.
I'll see.
This is a BeyondKasterborous podcast, available on iTunes, Audio Boom, Stitcher.com, Player FM, and BeyondKasterborous.com.